coming up next.
You're a black belt in Kung Fu, right?
No. Comprehensible input is perhaps the missing ingredient that they actually need.
She was yelling at me, but she was yelling in Spanish.
Reading subtitles, you're not listening very well.
¿Tú crees que podemos hablar en español? Por un poco.
Quizás.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gregory, and I'm here with Joseph from Input English. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. Joseph, could you explain to us what is an elephant? Why am I talking about elephants?
An elephant in the room? That is a casual expression that's relatively new. It's something I started hearing over the past perhaps 20 years, and it's a metaphor. Picture yourself in a room with an elephant and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to discuss this obvious thing. So it's a metaphor that refers to something that everybody sees, but nobody is talking about. Perhaps because we're all too polite.
Yes. Wow. That was a great explanation. Thank you so much for that. So the elephant in the room here is the contrast of me and Joseph. Me and Joseph, or Joseph and I, are two different people where we come from two different generations. We're different races. We perhaps have a different educational background, but at the same time, there are things that bring us together. One thing that brings us together is our love for languages, our love for knowing about other cultures and knowing about other people and other languages. So to me, it's amazing. This is an unlikely alliance or two people coming together or a friendship, but it's something that I really appreciate because that's what language does, is it unites us. So let's get into it. Let's get into this discussion today. And first, I'll just ask Joseph to introduce himself. How are you doing, Joseph? How are you feeling? And what are we doing here today?
So as you know, I am Joseph. I created the Input English channel. And the obvious question is, why would I do that? And it was a couple of things that came together to cause me to start my channel of comprehensible input in English. One is a lifelong fascination with learning a language, and then two, a lot of failure along the way, because early on I was coached to study grammar and vocabulary. In high school, I took German for 2 years, but I couldn't speak German. When it was all said and done, I couldn't understand native German. I couldn't speak it. I traveled to Germany and had a lot of frustration. I mean, I survived, but it was not pretty. I lived in Austria for 3 months, and that had a big effect on me because I was at a university. I could barely understand anything in German, but the people at the university were very kind, and so they spoke to me in German slowly and clearly, and then they allowed me to answer them in English. They understood English, but they instinctively fed me a constant diet of simple, well-pronounced, clear German. I was a beginner for sure, but I got a taste of comprehensible input. I had no idea that that was what that experience was. It wasn't until 2023 that I saw a video by Stephen Krashen, and he explained comprehensible input, and I went, that's what they were doing. But they didn't know. They were just helping an international scholar in their department. They were just being good hosts. None of us knew comprehensible input. So In 2023, I found the website for Dreaming Spanish, and I watched videos every day since that date. And it's an amazing journey for me to forget about all those failure years and embrace the really noticeable growth of the language just by listening to an hour or 2 or 3 of input that I like. Based on that experience and a suggestion made to the viewership of Dreaming Spanish by Pablo Roman, he literally said, "Why don't you start a channel?" He was talking to all of us, and I said, "Sure." And so I started the Input English channel because I think somebody needs to make good content so that people around the world who have studied English in school, have studied the grammar, have a vocabulary, but they can't understand native speech, they can't speak with confidence, and maybe they don't like their pronunciation of English. Comprehensible input is perhaps the missing ingredient that they actually need. So that's a rather long-winded explanation of how I got here.
No, it's great. It's great to have the information. It's great to know your story and where you started and where you've come now. And where you've come now is you're helping people. So that's a great and honorable thing. And we'll talk more about that. To quickly introduce myself, just for the new viewers or for those that don't know, I also have a similar story. A similar story as trying to learn a language when I was younger and struggling and failing. I wanted to know Spanish since I was little. I always had friends that spoke Spanish growing up, but I could never talk to them. So I wanted to know Spanish. So I tried and tried and failed and failed. And then finally, when I discovered comprehensible input, when I started listening to input at a level that I could understand and when I could make connections with the language, that's when everything changed. So I'm also advocating for good comprehensible input content. And that's what me and Joseph want to do here today is make some good comprehensible input for you all. So are you about ready to get into the first topic, Joseph?
Always ready.
Always ready. Okay. You were born ready?
Born ready.
Born ready. That's another expression because, of course, when you're a baby, you're not ready. But if you're born ready, then you're very ready. So, all right. Okay. So we're going into the first question. It's a long question, so really think. Let's really make connections. Okay. First topic, the effectiveness of comprehensible input. Effectiveness, how well it works or how it doesn't work. We're going to talk about the measure of that. So Joseph, you have a channel that you've dedicated thousands of hours of effort into. On top of your YouTube channel, you yourself have listened to over 2,000 hours of comprehensible input. The question is, why? Why do you advocate for this method? Why have you poured so much time into it? Please explain this to us.
Great question. If you look at 2,000 hours, at least here in the United States, that approximates a full-time job for 1 year. So that's the magnitude we're talking about. 2,000 hours is pretty vague until you realize it's an 8-hour day equivalent 5 days a week for 1 year. That's 2,000 hours. And that indeed is the case. I have at least 2,000 hours making, editing, uploading videos on the channel. No question about that. In terms of the input, probably 2,600 hours of Spanish and 424.2 hours of German. That shows you I'm keeping track of the hours because I want to have some idea where I am. What have I done? Perhaps that's a little compulsive, but it's analogous to a driver who knows they're going to drive 100 miles. They glance at the odometer, they glance at their dashboard and note that they have driven 20 miles, so they know they've got another 80 miles to go. So we do this sort of behavior. I don't demand it of others. I keep track of my hours. The reason I trusted the system was because of testimonial by Pablo Roman. Pablo is the fellow who started the Dreaming Spanish website, and he has a series of videos that explain comprehensible input, and he cleverly did those videos in Spanish. So as I was learning that information, I was getting input in Spanish. He quoted Stephen Krashen. He quoted Marvin Brown. Marvin Brown was a linguist educated at Yale with a PhD who went to Bangkok, Thailand, and worked at a language school in Bangkok. He started there using traditional methods, and the results were poor. And so, as a diligent, academically trained linguist, he thought he needed to make better materials, better study guides, better vocabulary lists, and better charts for teaching grammar. And the results were terrible. And then he got a copy of Stephen Krashen's book. And when he read Stephen Krashen's book, he thought, I'm at a language school. I can test this. And so he, in his school, instituted classes with comprehensible input. They didn't explicitly study grammar. They didn't explicitly study vocabulary. They just listened and listened and listened to very entertaining content. And he was astonished that the results were much better, much better. There have been a lot of studies about this. There are a lot of very dry academic papers. For me, I was more convinced by the fact that what they were telling me about comprehensible input matched my experience. That is, when I lived in Austria, I didn't know much. They were kind enough to speak to me a little slower and clearly, and I learned faster than I had ever learned before. I can compare my experience trying to learn languages for decades to my experience over the past 3 years of learning Spanish, and they are night and day. My current experience learning Spanish just continues to astonish me. When I have opportunities to speak, I just speak. I am not thinking in English and translating. I'm not thinking about grammar rules. I just speak, and it comes out. So I got so tickled, that is, so amused and happy with the results I was getting in Spanish. In September of last year, I actually started listening to German input in parallel. So, for instance, today, I listened to 2 hours of German and 1 hour of Spanish before lunch. I believe in it. I believe in it.
Man, that's incredible. That's really incredible. You really took us on a journey there. Talking about the academic side of it and the history and the people that started the discussion. You took us through that route. And then you also took us through the route of just your experiences, just how you've been able to, as you described, speak freely without thinking, without translating. It just comes out naturally. So that's really great. That's a really great testimony for comprehensible input. And if I give my 2 cents, or if I give my perspective of all of this, I can say that Joseph and I are similar.
Right.
So he talked about putting 2,000 hours of work into his channel. I don't know the measure. I don't know how many hours I put into my channel, but I work hard because I really believe that comprehensible input can help people. And the reason that I have the conviction to work on my site, to work on my videos, to work on comprehensible input content for you is because comprehensible input content helped me. So without even going into the academic and research side of it, I can speak about my own experiences. And my own experience is that I didn't understand Spanish at first at all. I watched very easy videos, very beginner videos, and I didn't understand anything. But now, if I can talk with a native speaker, I can listen to a native speaker speaking to me, speaking Spanish, and I understand perfectly. It's really funny. I'll tell you the moment that I really knew that I understood Spanish well. It's whenever. So I had a friend, a girlfriend, or maybe not, but she was a female, and we were together, and she was mad at me. She was yelling at me, but she was yelling in Spanish. And you know, when you're emotional, when you're angry, you start speaking fast and loud, and very naturally. So she was speaking this way, and I understood what she was saying. So at that moment, I knew, wow, comprehensible input is really great. I knew before that, but that's just that gives you a something to compare to for what my understanding is. To go from not understanding anything to understanding somebody yelling at me in Spanish. So that's my experience.
Whoa.
And oh yeah, were you gonna pop in there, Joseph? Say something?
What a great story. I guess that story of being yelled at in Spanish begs the question, was she using palabrotas? Was she using some explicit expressions that we won't use on this video? Perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. That's so funny. But okay. Well, thank you for sharing your perspective on this topic. And are you ready to go into the next one, Joseph?
Sure.
All right. So that brings us to our next topic. And I think this topic is very interesting. Some could even consider this topic controversial, meaning that there's a very mixed opinion on it. And sometimes when something is controversial, people's emotions can get involved. But we're just having a discussion. We're just talking. So let's talk about it. Let's think deeply. That's what we want to do here. Okay. So comprehensible input is defined by input that is actually comprehensible. Comprehensible means that you can understand the information that is being presented. It's a sliding scale because you can understand very little of the content, or you can understand a lot of the content, a large portion of the content. So you could understand 10% of the content, or you could understand 90% of the content. How much a person will understand is, of course, dependent on their level. But it's also the job of the teacher to create learning opportunities and make the content as comprehensible as possible. So with all of that being said, Joseph, how do you view the state or the current landscape of English comprehensible input now, in 2026, in April?
That's a brilliant question. There is so much to talk about. I get my guidance on how comprehensible the input should be from Stephen Krashen. He did studies, and his results, his studies, his findings that he reported in academic papers suggested that you should understand most of the words. Well, that's an interesting problem. for an absolute beginner. How do you get a grip on a language if you know nothing? If I were to turn on an audio track from Chinese or Vietnamese or Korean, to me it would be noise because I would have no way to get a grip on that. So teachers have solved that or addressed that problem by using visual cues. So, for instance, if somebody mentions a cell phone, they might hold up a cell phone. Or if they're talking about their nose or their glasses, they might gesture there. If they're speaking or listening, the gestures help people find their way and get a grip. I think of the first couple hundred hours of comprehensible input as the uglies. This is the miserable, frightening time for me because I'm having trouble getting a grip on the language. So you just slog through it. Every day, you just do a little bit. And for me, my level of understanding as an absolute beginner is very low. I always look for input that is as simple and as easy as I can find. However, there's a problem. I'm an adult. And for instance, if I use content that was made for children or young children, I get bored. And if I get bored with the input and I don't concentrate on it, then I don't get much benefit. So it's a trade-off. If you have input that's too easy, too infantile, boredom defeats you. If, on the other hand, it's too advanced, then frustration defeats you. There is a sweet spot where you understand the story, you understand the gist of what's going on, and then you have an attitude, an attitude that you tolerate the fact that you don't know all the words. You just let the words you don't know go past you because you'll find them later. You'll pick them up as you get more input. That was my experience in Spanish. I started from zero. I didn't know anything. I knew hola and gracias, and that was it. And so my first several hundred hours were very difficult. After that, they got a lot easier and a lot more fun. In English, we have a lot of content there, but it's evolving. I would say that the comprehensible input in English is a moving target. If you find a channel on YouTube that says comprehensible input English, and then you look at the videos, I usually go to the oldest video first. And what I usually find is that the oldest video on that particular channel or that type of channel usually is traditional learning methods. They're talking about lists of words to memorize. They're talking about grammar. They're talking about phrasal verbs. They're talking about all the minutiae, and their channel didn't start out as comprehensible input. I find a lot of teachers, good, conscientious people on YouTube and online are teaching by comprehensible input, but they are new to that. They're now making comprehensible input when they started out making traditional grammar and vocabulary videos. As a language learner, we don't always have control of the level of the content that somebody else made. And I found myself interested in the content that I found, but it was hard. I didn't understand it very well. And then I had to make the decision, was it too hard? So I'd put it aside, Or was it just a little too hard? So I would just persevere. I would just stick with it and struggle, knowing that my level would grow. I did both. So I think the state of the art right now for comprehensible input in English is that channels like yours and mine and others are growing. We're growing our experience. We're building our video libraries. This is something I think is important. That's why I made 500 videos. As a language learner, if I go to a source of input and they only have 4 videos, they're of no use to me. But if they've got 300 or 200 or even just 100, then they are a major resource and I can get a lot of input if I like what they're doing. So I think it's a moving target and the movement is in a very positive direction.
Okay. That was a great and thorough response. I'm going to try to break all of that down. So, Joseph, you were very clear and very positive, and you didn't call anybody out specifically, meaning you didn't name any channels that you liked or you didn't like. You simply talked about first the people that had English channels before and were teaching with different methods, but are now teaching with comprehensible input. I've definitely seen that. Yeah, and then you mentioned people today, of course, like yourself, like me. I don't know if I'm going to mention any other channels now, but definitely there are a lot of channels that are appearing, and people of all different ages and races, and anything you could imagine. They're all appearing on YouTube now, which Joseph believes is a good thing, because then you can have more input, you can have different input. So you feel overall optimistic about the state of comprehensible input and where it's going. Is that correct, Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. As a language learner, I am hungry for really good input. There are a couple of good channels that create input on YouTube for German, good comprehensible input. And my frustration with them is they don't make enough. I always find myself hungering for more input. They're doing a great job, and why don't they publish every day? Well, I know the answer. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and people have lives to lead. So it's my hunger doesn't determine what they do. I get it. But at the same time, we need more input. We need more and more good input.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. So thank you for sharing your perspective, and now I'll share my perspective on this topic. And again, the intention is not to call anybody out. It's not to, try to create drama or anything like that, but perhaps I'll be more direct, or I'll be more open about how I feel. Let's see my explanation.
Sure.
So I have, yeah. So I have four, what can I say? I have 4 points of a video, 4 things that I can look at. And depending on these type of things, I start to think in my head if this is good comprehensible input or not good comprehensible input. Here. So the first thing I'll say is the usage of subtitles in videos. And I'll start this off by talking about my own experience. So as an English learner watching Spanish comprehensible input, my preference was that there was never subtitles. I never wanted there to be Spanish subtitles on the screen, because I believe, and how my brain felt, is that if I'm reading the text that's on the screen, I'm not really listening. Because listening and reading are, of course, two completely different skills. Listening to something and not using any visual cues is a completely different element than actually looking at characters and receiving information. So if I looked at a video with subtitles, then I would feel my brain getting confused and it would completely ruin the experience for me. I couldn't even watch that video because the subtitles were so distracting. I will say that right now I'm listening to Korean comprehensible input and I don't know the Korean alphabet at all. So if I watch a Korean comprehensible input video and there's subtitles, it doesn't matter because I don't know the symbols. But I feel that it's a huge disservice or a huge blow against anybody that the language is similar, that the subtitles, it would ruin the experience. So that's one thing that I feel strongly about is that topic. But actually, I'd like to get your perspective on that, Joseph. How do you feel about subtitles in general and kind of the explanation that I gave for perhaps not having subtitles on the screen? Your honest thoughts.
I am always impressed that when you express an opinion and I'm here sitting trying to figure out what you are going to say, that you usually express an opinion that is very consistent with my thoughts on the matter. I find subtitles very distracting. They invite subvocalization. That is, we look at those words and in our mind we pronounce them without saying them out loud. That's called subvocalization. And I think that competes with our listening process. We don't have infinite mental bandwidth when it comes to our conscious mind. Our subconscious mind approaches infinite bandwidth, but our conscious mind has very discrete bandwidth. And if you chew up a lot of your bandwidth reading subtitles, you're not listening very well. So I'm exactly with you. I don't do it. I have literally held up my hand in front of the screen to block subtitles so that I don't get distracted because some creators put them up. My YouTubes don't have subtitles with the exception of the shorts. I only have, I think, 6 shorts, and they have subtitles because they are introducing what I do to a perhaps broader audience. And the subtitles actually get people to click and watch the video. But then when they look at a real video, a full-length video, I don't put subtitles. Now, YouTube will, the customer can choose subtitles and push the closed caption button, and YouTube will auto-generate subtitles. But I don't recommend people use it because I think it decreases our efficiency of learning.
Yep. Okay. Yes, thank you for that, and I'm very much in agreement with that. So, yeah, I'll just expand on that a little bit. So, for me, if we're talking about good comprehensible input or not good comprehensible input, if an English creator is using subtitles, then I just wonder a little bit, what are the intentions? Now, let me be clear. At a certain level, a video with subtitles can be good. There's nothing wrong with reading subtitles. You might have somebody watching the video that doesn't even know about comprehensible input, so subtitles are fine. People can do whatever they want. So me personally, if I want to create the best comprehensible input, then I want everybody to be included. And I don't want anybody to have the experience of the video being ruined. Especially because we work hard on videos. We want people to watch them. So I want to give everybody a chance to watch and learn and understand. But if you don't choose to do that, if you love a creator that has subtitles in their videos. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I just wonder why. But okay, wow, that was 1 point out of 4. Maybe I won't talk about all 4. The last thing I'll say, the last thing I'll say about this one. So Joseph explained it really well earlier. What makes good comprehensible input and what is the purpose? And the purpose is helping somebody that doesn't understand the language start to understand the language. Joseph used the expression get a grip, or I don't know if it's an expression or if it's just a set of words, but get a grip means to finally start getting the hang of something, to finally start grasping something. So you have to go from not understanding the language to getting a grip and understanding the language. And again, like Joseph said, you can use gestures. So if I'm talking about a pick that I'm holding in my hands, I can say, this is a pick, and I can show you a pick. If I'm happy, I can have a happy face and have energy and be expressive. I can't just say, I am happy, but my face doesn't change. Then you're not going to understand. So to me, a good teacher is a person that can communicate a message well and really be expressive. You can be expressive in any capacity, any way you want, in any type of talking video, in any type of vlog, any type of beginner video. It only depends on your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. But me, at least, I want to make the best comprehensible input. I really want to make you understand. So that's why I'm here. That's why we're here. And I think putting in the effort of making good comprehensible input, the people that want comprehensible input, like Joseph was saying, he's so grateful for the people that are making good German content because it really helps. So I want to help you. I hope that all the other English comprehensible input teachers make good content and help you, and the world will be a better place. Would you agree with that, Joseph?
Absolutely.
The world will be a better place if we...
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the need to reinforce meanings with gestures or pointing to things, I think depends on the level. I make videos for the intermediate level, and so I don't do a lot of visual cues. What I do is try to create pure language videos that are interesting, and so I don't have music, I don't have B-roll, I don't have scenery, I just have language, and I trim out any dead air. That is, any video that has no language in it, I just trim that out so that when somebody watches one of these intermediate videos for, say, 15 minutes, they get 15 minutes of pure language. And given that, the only remaining challenge is to make it interesting. And that's easier said than done. You can just run your mouth for a long time, but it takes a lot of thought, a lot of effort to make videos that people find interesting. And that's where I spend most of my time, is trying to craft videos that people think are interesting. Yes.
That sounds great. I think that's a really important point. Thank you for bringing that up. And yes, I know you could say the king of intermediate videos. You have 500 now.
Well,
okay.
So on that point, I have a couple of examples in Spanish that taught me how to make videos. I don't knock off their work, but Pablo Roman's work and all of his creators on his platform showed how to make videos and gave good examples of it. And then I listened to a lot of podcasts by Juan Fernandez, which is Español con Juan, or 1001 Reasons to Learn Spanish. He has two types of videos and podcasts. And Juan Fernandez was a tiger for making good input in Spanish. And I learned a lot about the craft of making an interesting, personable video. Now, we all need to use our own style, and my videos are not knockoffs of other people's work, but you do get inspiration by seeing what other people have done.
That's true. That's very true. That's a great point. And yes, shout out Dreaming Spanish. I never listened to the other Espanol con Juan.
Oh,
I never listened to him, but I've heard people talk about him.
he's very good.
It's good. It's yes, that's a great reminder as well, because every work of art is inspired by other people and other works of art. So yeah, our job now is to make the best videos we can, the most interesting videos we can. And yeah, I really appreciate your style. I really appreciate your style.
So what's next, Coach?
Okay.
What you got?
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. All right. This has been a great discussion so far. There are so many other things that we can talk about. If you like this video and you want us to make more, we definitely can do it, talking about any topic or doing anything at all. But here's the topic for now. So, learning with comprehensible input is a long road. It takes time. You're not going to become an expert of the language in 3 months or 6 months or even 1 year. It takes time. It's a continuous process. Sometimes it's hard to know what to expect if you're going through that process for the first time. But actually, we can use the example of the skills or hobbies that we've learned in life to help us see that process better. So my question is, Joseph, how would you compare learning a language with learning one of your skills or hobbies that you reached a good level in?
What a complex and interesting question. I think the key word is skill. When we're listening, when we're learning a language, we are learning skills. We're learning skills of listening and recognizing the words, extracting the meaning. So the skills related to listening comprehension. We're also importing all the sounds of that language, the way to pronounce the words, because the pronunciation of words in different languages uses different phonemes. We use different sounds to make words. On paper, they may look the same, but spoken, they sound very different. So we need to have the listening skills for listening comprehension, and then later we're going to need to develop speaking skills. With traditional methods, they often have people trying to speak on day one. And that was part of the failure machine for me. It just didn't work. How do you pronounce a language you don't know? When I'm trying to learn something on a musical instrument, or I'm trying to learn something, some sort of mechanical skill, I'm making something, building something, I need to see somebody do that. I need to have some input, a demonstration. I don't learn a lot from watching my own hands struggle with no direction. So I need some direction. I need some input, which for a lot of physical skills is watching them. For music, it's listening to them. And then I need some deliberate practice. I need to take what I've learned from the input of watching or listening or both, and then do some deliberate practice. This is where it gets a little confusing with comprehensible input, because detractors online will say, oh, it's just passive and you're just sitting there stupidly listening to this stuff. You're not putting any effort into it. To which I say, nonsense, that's not true. If you're paying attention, it takes a lot of effort and you're practicing and developing listening skills. The ancient philosopher tells us we have one mouth and two ears. We should listen a lot more than we talk. And that works with comprehensible input as well. So I see a lot of parallels, and I feel very encouraged by the results I get. It's fun. You know, I'm of a certain age. I'm not in my 20s or 30s. I'm over 60 years old. And people look at people over 60 and they don't expect much of us. And I don't take that personal. It's a societal norm that more mature people or older people are not expected to do much. Nobody expects me to learn 1, 2, or 3 more languages during my lifetime. And I take that as the challenge. I think that is a motivation.
Wow. 100%. That's very motivational to hear that. And yes, as I think about your journey and getting to know you, Mr. Joseph, I think your hard work and your attitude is motivational, is respectable. So I appreciate your efforts and I appreciate that answer. That was a really great breakdown. You explained it very well. I can give the example for myself. What hobby or skill that I've acquired is like learning Spanish, is like learning another language. And this really clicked in my mind as Joseph was explaining it. But you think about martial arts, you think about boxing or kickboxing. And in boxing and kickboxing, you're throwing punches, right? You're throwing elbows, you're throwing kicks. But if somebody doesn't teach you how to punch or kick or how to do it with a correct form, then you just make up whatever form you want. You just make up whatever kick you want. And 99.9999% of the time, it's wrong. You need somebody that knows the kick to show you the right form, to show you the proper technique, and then you can have a good kick. But just like a language, the first time you speak or the first time you kick, it's not perfect. You have to try it, and then maybe it goes well or maybe it doesn't go well, but then you have to train it again, and you have to try it again, and you have to speak more. So I really see the parallels, and thank you, Joseph, for explaining it well. And I'm just reiterating that receiving input, making a mental model of what you're hearing or what you need to be doing comes first. And then after enough of that input, after enough of that information, it can start to process and come out so much better. So I think that should be helpful for people.
I like your turn of phrase there. You said mental model, mental image. When you watch somebody doing martial arts, you watch the flow, you watch the movement, you watch where their joints are interacting and where their center of gravity is, where they're getting their stability. And it's a very dynamic process. So there's a lot to watch. When you were explaining that, it reminded me of an experience. I was taking a class in blacksmithing. We were learning to forge things out of steel by heating them up and then hitting them with a hammer to shape them. And the blacksmiths of the world built the Industrial Revolution because the blacksmiths built the tools that built the machines that allowed the Industrial Revolution to occur. And the blacksmiths generally, over generations, became the machinists of the world. So I was taking this class and I was fascinated with it. And the master, the teacher, was doing a demonstration and he was pretty long-winded and very detail-oriented. And so his demo went long. And this young guy next to me got really impatient because his theory was that he paid to have his hands working the metal. So he didn't pay much attention to the demo. The rest of us did. And then at the end of the day, I got to see what he had made. It wasn't special. His impatience had a very big cost for him because he denied himself the input that he needed. He didn't pay attention to the input.
Wow.
I love your story.
Wow. I see how... Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that story because I see how it all connects. That's great. I think that will be really helpful for people to understand. Thank you, Ms. Joseph. Oh, I have one more question, actually.
Sure.
Are you ready for the final question, Joseph?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're a black belt in Kung Fu, right?
No.
No, I thought you were.
No. I don't know anything about it. No. I'm a very simple musician, blacksmith, content creator, and I've done a few other things.
Oh, wow. Very nice, very nice. Okay, and actually there's one more part of the show, and this is, I called it a show. There's one more section here, and this is completely unplanned, unfiltered, so it might go in the video or it might not, but are you ready for
Sure.
it? Okay. All right. ¿Tú crees que podemos hablar en español? Por un poco.
Quizás.
Creo que sí. Tenemos mucho tiempo. All right. Well, this is the end of this video now. Thank you so much, Joseph. I'll give you the floor if you have any closing thoughts, any encouragement, anything you want to share about your channel. The floor is yours.
Well, I just want to thank you for hosting this, for extending the invitation, and suggesting that we start these dialogues. I think we have a lot in common, and I see a lot of opportunities to make good content for people. One of the things that has been missing on my channel has been conversations. I watch a channel in German where they go out onto the street and stick a microphone in people's face and say, "Would you like to talk to us in German?" And the people say, "No." And so they have to go through the 80% of the people who say no to find the 20% of the people who do talk to them. And then those become the basis of their videos. The trouble is the people being interviewed on the street don't speak clearly. They don't enunciate. Sometimes they use slang. And I don't find them very understandable. Now, I'm not here to criticize these fine people who put a lot of effort into making their content. It's just that for me, based on my own opinions, I want input that is made deliberately. When you speak in this conversation between the two of us, you speak very clearly, and our content, I think, is going to be very useful to people. So I just say thank you, and I look forward to doing this again. This was fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, making great videos, making helpful videos, making fun videos. That's definitely my goal and mission. So we aligned in that. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, we're an unlikely alliance or an unlikely friendship, but I'm glad that we're connected, and yes, we'll do some great things.
Well, think about it. if it wasn't for comprehensible input and our parallel experiences, we would have never met. And then you could actually say we've never met because we're 1,600 miles away as we are speaking right now. So it's super unlikely that we would have ever met.
Very unlikely, very unlikely. But here we are. Yeah, love languages. Gotta love it. Okay, well, thank you again, Joseph. Thank you everybody for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. Leave a comment. We'll make more, and see you next time. Goodbye.